to you, and you say, come to me. Spread your wings. Catch the wind. He's carrying you.
Shalom and welcome to this month's Jerusalem Dispatch ICEJ UK. This is the ministry that brings you a closer connection to Israel and the Jewish people through the pro-Israel Christian ministry that is the International Christian Embassy of Jerusalem UK. And in this month's programme we shall be discussing the Feast of Tabernacles and having a report on what happened at this year's feast that brought so many Christians from around the world to gather in Jerusalem to worship the Lord and also to show solidarity with Israel and the Jewish people. And in this month's programme, I am joined by Joanne Lokuta, who is the ICEJ UK's administrator, but effectively the key person that makes this ministry work. So welcome to the programme, and of course Pastor Mark Starbuck, who's a regional leader in the Hampshire area for ICEJ UK. Great to see you, and you are fresh back from Israel after attending what was a very successful Feast of Tabernacles this year. But share with us some of the latest developments and updates regarding the ministry of ICEJ UK and what has been a kind of action-packed month for the ministries. They stand with Israel and the Jewish people.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. It's great to be back here on the programme. So we had a really great time at the Feast of Tabernacles, and I think October, September time is like that time of year for ICEJ where we just focus in on the feast and we put all our efforts into that, and it was a wonderful time, as we're going to get into later. But here in the UK we're preparing for our conferences and also continuing with our prayer initiatives. I think I just want to highlight that at the beginning, really, the way ICEJ is really praying really hard for Israel at the moment. We started an initiative back in August, prayed every single day through August and September. We called it Battle for Britain, and that was every morning for 2 months. That was in response to Keir Starmer saying that the UK would recognise a Palestinian state. So we are contending for the UK and Israel, and that prayer initiative is carrying on. Battle for Britain, and it's every Monday and Friday, 8 a.m. for half an hour. So
Excellent.
I'd just like to, tell our viewers about that.
It's very important, so well done. And it's also got a great logo, the Spitfire, which is excellent.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark, great to have you back on the programme, particularly joining Joanne as we unpack this year's Feast of Tabernacles. But share with us how you are hosting the exciting conference in your church in Southampton. It's entitled The Apple of God's Eye, which is with Malcolm Heading, the former Director of ICEJ in Jerusalem and International Bible Study teacher, and this is occurring on Saturday the 15th of November.
Yeah, Simon, lovely to be back with you. It's been a while, but we're thrilled that Malcolm will be with us on the 15th of November down at Millbrook Christian Centre in Southampton. Malcolm was a significant part of my journey to understanding Israel, and I can remember being on a plane with him to Israel when he handed me a folder with his first book in it, For Zion's Sake. So Malcolm is a known author, a wonderful writer, and of course, as you mentioned, he was also the executive director for ICEJ for a number of years, and so I would regard Malcolm as being one of the top Bible teachers on the subject of Israel, and we invite you all to come and to be with us on the 15th and to share a day of teaching and worship with Malcolm Heading.
And you forgot to add, he's a fellow South African as well.
Yes, yes he is. Yes,
and Joanne, you're also hosting, aren't you, Malcolm Heading up in Wigan. So share with us how our viewers in the Northwest can come along to this event. Is it the last major event of ICEJ for the calendar, which is 2025?
Yeah, this visit of Malcolm's is a big one for us. We're all really looking forward to having him over. He's here he's in Wigan on the 8th of November. A full day conference at my church. Excellent. In Billinge, Wigan. And then he's going to be over in Liverpool on the 9th in the evening, the 9th of November, and then in the Midlands, the West Midlands, on Wednesday the 12th. So loads of opportunities for people to get along and hear from Malcolm Heading, who's had a great...
Excellent. And our viewers watching, share with us how there's a new sign-up link from the website. Which
Yes. If people want to sign up to find out more about these events, then please do go to our website. I think the link is going to come up on the screen. We've got a new place to go to for you to sign up to receive the word from Jerusalem and also email updates from the UK.
And Mark, just share with us the importance, so Christians watching this programme on Revelation TV when it goes out, or watching it as it goes out live, share with us how they can get involved with this very important ministry, because the question I had for a number of years, particularly from amazing viewers who have a real passion and love for Israel, is what ministry can I get involved in? Where can I give donations that are really going to bless Israel and the Jewish people? And of course, that question's been answered now because of the amazing ministry that is the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem, UK. So share with us how our viewers can get involved and support this very important work to really uphold Israel during her hour of need as the nations have turned against her.
Yeah. Well, Simon, I think first of all, to sign up, as Joanne has just given us the information, become aware of what ICEJ is doing. And in any work, any mission, there's always the element of prayer, there's always the element of financial support, and there's the element of actually attending events. So in all of those ways, people can be involved with ICEJ. Why is ICEJ, in my mind, such a significant ministry? Well, when it was formed, there were three issues that God laid on the hearts of the sort of fathers, the pioneers of the ministry. And the first was in response to Isaiah 41, comfort ye, my people, to be a Christian voice of comfort to the nation of Israel and the Jewish people. And so much of what ICEJ does is a practical expression of that. The second issue was to confront the error of the church with regards to Israel, the issues of replacement theology. So that introduced the whole aspect of educating, informing, teaching, and connecting with the church about Israel. And then the final aspect was to confront hatred and prejudice in the sort of aftermath of the Second World War and the horrors of the Holocaust. There came that sort of sense of never again, that we should never allow something like this to take place. And that's very much at the heart of the ICEJ ministry, to confront racial prejudice, to confront anti-Semitism, and to encourage people to recognize humanity, dignity, whether it's Jewish, whether it's African, whether it's this culture or that culture. All people are to be loved and appreciated. And that's part of the heartbeat of ICEJ.
Amazing. So you said that so articulately and so well, thank you. And Joanne, just share with us how, for example, over the past 2 years, that this has been pretty much unprecedented for Israel. The biggest mass terrorist attack in Israel's history by Hamas on October the 7th, followed by the wars in Gaza and in Lebanon, and then of course the isolation and demonization of Israel and the Jewish people. And that's not forgetting the unprecedented rise in Jew hatred that we've seen in this country and around the world. But share with us how this ministry of ICEJ UK has come to the fore, and share how much money our viewers and supporters of ICEJ have actually given to really bless Israel and help Israel at this critical time.
Well, yeah, I love to kind of share how generous people have been from the UK, really generous. We saw a rise in giving as soon as October the 7th happened. We saw a rise in donations coming in. People just wanted to, they can't get there to help, so they just want to pray and they want to give money. And over the last 2 years, we've sent in the region of £500,000 from the UK.
That's amazing. Well done.
To Israel.
Amazing. And Mark, we're talking about Feast of Tabernacles, and it was only last month that the 2025 Feast of Tabernacles took place in Jerusalem. The theme was that 10 from every nation. But share with us your role serving as the feast chaplain for 19 years. And I know it must have been tough giving up that position, because this is a position that you loved, you cherished, you've done it so well, diligently. So just reflect back at your time serving as the feast chaplain for the Feast of Tabernacles in Jerusalem, for the biggest tourist event on Israel's calendar every year.
Yeah, my first attendance at a feast was in 1982, obviously as a delegate. And so it was a massive surprise and privilege when in 2007, if my memory is correct, Malcolm Heading gave me a call and invited me to play, first of all, as a guitarist in the worship team. So my first involvement with the feast as a team member was actually as a musician. That was then subsequently followed for a number of years, and I sang as part of the worship team. But all during this time, I also had this role of being the chaplain to the feast team. And it was an amazing privilege. And of course, if you can imagine, over 18 different feasts, I have a wonderful collection of memories. Probably some of the most potent and powerful memories are just working with the worship team, arriving at the big auditorium and seeing the dancers prostrate before God, worshiping Him. It gets quite emotional. Then, of course, the wind down at the Dead Sea with Angus Buchan, where he's preaching and literally with his farmer's hat leaning into this wind, and it's raining in the Dead Sea. I mean, even the Israelis that were there had never ever experienced something like that. And there was such a sense of God's presence. And then, of course, the joy of the Israeli people, just seeing them dance with us, sing with us, laugh with us. These are memories that you carry with you. And one of the little things which I introduced, which I hope they carry on, is we used to take members of the feast team for a sunrise walk. And so at about 4 o'clock in the morning on the Sabbath, we would leave the hostel and we'd walk through the streets of Jerusalem, up the Mount of Olives, and watch the sunrise and worship on the top of the mountain. Wonderful memories.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for your incredible role that you played as the feast chaplain. And Joanne, I mean, what an historic time it was to be in Jerusalem and in Israel during this year's Feast of Tabernacles. The announcement of the Gaza peace plan and the ceasefire coming into effect in Gaza. Is it holding, is it not holding? That's a different issue and a different program. But effectively, I mean, the 20 remaining living hostages returned home to their loved ones. And it looked like for the first time in over 2 years, the Israelis were actually smiling. So give us your thoughts on what it was like to be there on a truly historic moment. And also not forgetting that President Trump touched down at Ben Gurion Airport and was only the 4th US president ever to address the Knesset.
Yeah. It was lovely. It was wonderful to be there, honestly. I mean, we went with an expectation because, the peace talks and the negotiations had started and they were ongoing. And so we kind of went feeling expectant. And we prayed at the beginning of the feast that we would see the hostages come home by the end of the feast. It was like a prayer, a cry to God that the hostages would come home. Of course, on the 9th, the news started filtering through that the ceasefire was coming. And then, by no coincidence, we were outside the Knesset in the Rose Garden. We'd completed the Jerusalem March, and months before, the organisers had arranged for it to finish in the Rose Garden, opposite the Knesset, for a prayer meeting and a worship gathering. So as the government were assembling to finalise the peace plan to agree it, we were outside ICEJ we were outside there in the Rose Garden just praying and worshipping God together from the nations. So very exciting time to be there, definitely.
Wonderful. And Mark, there is a huge spiritual significance in this, that the war started on October the 7th, 2023, which was the Jewish festival of Simchat Torah, the giving of the law, the giving of the word. This is where the rabbis dance around the Torah scrolls. And it ended 2 years later on Simchat Torah. I don't know the significance of this, but do you have any spiritual biblical insight into this? Because this is not a coincidence.
No specific insight but it was something that you sort of think, wow, that's really interesting. But of course, the whole war has a number of dimensions to it. I mean, the most obvious is the sort of ongoing hatred of Hamas, the sort of militant Muslim extremism to remove Israel. And I wonder sometimes whether when well-meaning people sing from the river to the sea, whether they fully understand what they're singing, that they're actually singing about the removal of the Jewish state. They talk about genocide. Well, to me, that sounds like genocide. But of course, something really interesting that David Parson brought out, always get those two mixed up. David Parson brought out when he was visiting with us that this war has historical roots. You know the story of David and Goliath and the Philistines, and of course Samson and the whole sort of Gaza issue, all of the Philistine strongholds that were down on the coast. That this area has historically always been a place of conflict for the people of Israel. And so very interesting to see that this war that has sort of biblical roots is still carrying on. But of course, it's part of a bigger picture, and very interesting that Dinesh D'Souza, the American filmmaker, has produced this movie about the dragon. And of course, the Revelation picture of the dragon wanting to destroy the woman. And we've always seen in that the picture of the devil and his hatred for Israel. And to understand that this war, this Gaza tragedy, is part of a global picture of hatred and anti-Semitism, that we read about.
Absolutely. And Joanne, compare and contrast the different situations that you were in. So you were actually in Israel for the Feast of Tabernacles in 2023 when Hamas invaded Israel and carried out the biggest mass murder of Jewish people since the Holocaust over 80 years ago. You were there in Jerusalem when the rockets were being fired in Jerusalem and kind of worried about how you would actually fly back home that day. Then you came back 2 years later when the hostages came home. Share with us the difference between the two feasts, one in 2023 and this one in 25.
Yeah. So I have to remember that actually in 23 we'd had an amazing feast.
Yeah.
It had been wonderful, honestly. I feel like the worship and the teaching, the experiences, it had been upper level that year, in my experience anyway. And we'd had a wonderful feast, and we were preparing to go home with our hearts full of everything that we'd experienced because God had moved and it had been amazing. But then the news started filtering through, and we were in the bomb shelters, and so we left with our hearts broken at the same time because we'd been to those communities at the Gaza border just 2 days earlier. So there was the contrast there of the wonderfulness of the feast but yet the brokenness that we were feeling by leaving. So to come back 2 years later, we were full of expectancy because we felt like God was doing something, and we went expecting something and expecting to contend for something. And so then when we were there, then we were contending. We were contending for the hostages, and we were contending for the ceasefire. And so the contrast in that was just, we left in pain and we returned with expectancy. And then we left with joy.
Excellent. Always good to leave with joy. Let's have a look at this excellent report from the Feast of Tabernacles. This one's entitled, Why Sukkot is Israel's Most Joyful Celebration.
Sukkot was considered to be the most happiest time, and we wanted to celebrate this happiness with everybody. As a matter of fact, it's a time when all the nations would come and celebrate in Jerusalem. We're actually watching with our own eyes the prophecy actually come true of the nations all coming up to Jerusalem to celebrate with us. And that is so, so powerful. It's not just that I'm seeing a group of friends coming together and praying and worshiping and singing and dancing in Jerusalem. You're actually fulfilling God's word and doing that. And that's amazing to see that. It's another testimony that says, yeah, we're living in a very, very special time.
And great to see there my friend Rabbi Shmuel Bauman enjoying the feast celebrations at Sukkot. And share with us, the Israelis call it Feast of let me repeat that. The Israelis call this festival Sukkot, Gentiles call it the kind of Feast of Tabernacles. But share with us the kind of biblical significance of the Feast of Tabernacles, or in Hebrew, Sukkot.
Well, this is a fascinating subject. When you look at the Feast of Tabernacles or Sukkot, there are at least three different ways of understanding it. The first is as an agricultural feast. And so it has the name the Feast of Ingathering. And so this would be a feast that would celebrate the harvest that has been gathered in. Really significant. A feast that happens after the harvest has been gathered in. So that's the one aspect. The second aspect, and the one that we are most familiar with, is this term, the Feast of Tabernacles, or the Feast of Booths, or in Hebrew, Sukkot. And of course, this is a remembrance of the days of pilgrimage, that the people were to remember the time when they were in the desert, when God was looking after them, feeding them, protecting them, and they dwelled in tents, when they dwelled in booths. And again, these little structures have to have certain characteristics. You've got to be able to see the stars. If it rains, you've got to be able to get wet. And so the whole idea is of God looking after you in those days of vulnerability. That's another aspect. The third aspect, and the one that is incredibly interesting, is the prophetic aspect, that it is this feast that will be celebrated in the millennium. And so you have these three different sort of, you could say, understandings of the Feast of Tabernacles. It's an amazing feast. It's what is regarded almost as the sort of Jewish Christmas. It has that joyful, celebratory, colorful aspect to it.
Wonderful. And Joanne, the theme for this year's Feast of Tabernacles was 10 from every nation. So can you tell us how many delegates you had coming from the United Kingdom?
We had 82.
Oh, wow.
I know.
No way.
Yeah, 82.
That's amazing.
I took 28. I took a group of 28. Brian from Northern Ireland, he took 13. And then people just made their own way. 82. It's a great number. You know, the Americans had 141. So comparatively, I'm pretty pleased with that.
That's a very good showing. So well done if you're watching this program and that you were part of this year's delegation for the Feast of Tabernacles. Let's have a look at first day of the Feast of Tabernacles, and this took place in the Negev desert, near to those communities that were so devastated by Hamas back on October the 7th, 2023.
Good morning, it's feast day.
And Lord, I just ask that as we begin this feast celebration, Lord, that you would lead us, that you would guide us, that you would cover us with your righteousness.
Hello, from the Netherlands. 2 years ago today, October 6th, we were here with Ophir Lipstein.
An hour later, we heard in the news Ophir Lipstein, head of the regional council of Sha'ar HaNegev, was being shot by Islamic terrorists.
God can do anything to him. Let's just trust him. If you feel like you want to come by faith and say, Lord, I want to touch the hem of your garment, please do so.
So that was highlight of day one and the opening of this year's Feast of Tabernacles 2025 in the Negev region of Israel, very, very close to those communities that were destroyed by Hamas on October the 7th. Mark, share with us the symbolic significance of opening the Feast of Tabernacles in that Gaza envelope, which is in the Negev, to show solidarity and support for those communities so devastated by what happened on October the 7th 2 years ago.
Well, Simon, as Joanne mentioned a moment ago, on the 7th of October, just a few days before, the ICEJ team had been down there in Sderot. They'd actually met some of the people who were later murdered. And so last year, when we had the first sort of feast after October 7th, we did exactly the same thing. We opened up with our first part of the program down in the Gaza envelope, and repeated this year, because what we're wanting to say to the Jewish people is that they're not alone. And though the world may be full of hatred and anger and there's so much turmoil, that there is a Christian community out there that are praying for them, that are standing with them, that want to, in whatever way possible, come alongside them in this terrible time. So these events are billed as what we call solidarity events, and that's exactly what it is, to come alongside the victims, those who were part of that terrible time, that terrible trauma, and just give them a sort of a hug to say, hey, you know, we're thinking of you. And of course, being involved financially, being involved in just lots of practical ways. The other reason why we do this is also to give delegates that are traveling to the feast the opportunity to go and see some of the sites and some of the places, you know, the car park and all of that sort of thing, so that they come away with a real sense of what happened on that day.
So important, thank you. And Joanne, share with us what it was like to be in southern Israel 2 years on from the horrors that took place there. It must have been a kind of very moving time as well, but I'm sure that those Jewish communities in that Gaza envelope really appreciated all the delegates from all around the world opening the Feast of Tabernacles in the Negev.
Yeah, like Mark's just said, it's really important that you go. It's hard to go. It's difficult. You know, it's painful to be there, really, you know, because those piles of cars and the burnt out cars, the cars that have been shot to pieces that you see at the car graveyard, and then to go to the Nova Festival site and see the photographs of the 352 people that were murdered there, and just to take it all in. It's difficult, it's painful, but it's really important that we do it, because like Mark said, as Christians we go, and we go in our numbers, and it speaks volumes, because it's hard to go. It costs money, it costs time, there's opposition to go in for many people. So to be there is a real stand of solidarity, and it means a lot to the people that are there. And
Mark, just unpack for us what it means for Israel, for example, that in attendance of this year's Feast of Tabernacles was 1,510 Christians from all over the globe, showing love, support and solidarity for Israel at this critical time.
Well, just think for yourself that every weekend for the last number of years, there have been these people marching down the streets, saying the most vile things, expressing the most vile sentiments. And I remember speaking to an Israeli some years ago, and he asked me a question: why does the world hate us? And you know, it's a very difficult question to sort of explain from some of the biblical perspectives of the Jewish experience. But for us, it's so important as a Christian ministry to be able to say in this way to these people that we have traveled, we have spent money, many have given up leave to come and to not just be in the land, but to come and embrace and love and be that hug to the Jewish nation.
Absolutely. So let's have a look at highlights of the Feast of Tabernacles Day 2 and Day 3 that were this year in Jerusalem.
Behold, how good and pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. It is like the precious oil upon the head, running down the beard of Aaron.
If you believe, you're going to receive your miracle in the name of Yeshua.
When others left Jerusalem, you came and said like Abraham, Hineni, we are here. We stand with the state of Israel, with the people of Israel in the Holy Land.
So there were great highlights there of Day 2 and Day 3 of the Feast of Tabernacles in Jerusalem. And Mark, give us your perspective, attending so many feasts on what is known as the annual Israeli Guest Night and the Roll Call of the Nations, where the special guest was Israel's President Isaac Herzog. And there was also a letter read out by America's ambassador to Israel, the Mike Huckabee himself.
Now, Simon, in the original sort of program of the feast, the Parade of Nations was actually the opening night at the venue. In recent times, they've sort of made that part of the Israeli night. And the Israeli night was always, for us, an incredible moment, because we would get all of the sort of Jewish dignitaries, Israelis, people that we worked with, or were like people that were working at the hostel where the team was staying, and they would come along. And there would be a sort of a VIP dinner, and then there would be a wonderful program of highlights. They would take literally the best items from the feast program and put it on. And then sometimes there would be other guest stars who would come in, famous singers or personalities and so on. And it was just a wonderful evening. You know, the president would be there, the prime minister would be there, there were mayors, there were soldiers, there were dignitaries, heroes, citizens, just a phenomenal time. So it had an element of spectacle, like a concert, but it had an element of laughter, of joy. I can remember one year they had the writer of Jerusalem, the Gold, came and played her song. And it was just a beautiful night, filled with hope, filled with inspiration, and just filled with a real sense of joy. You know, I can remember dancing on stage with our hostel manager, just with that sort of, you know, sense of, you know, Israel will live. Just incredible moments.
Amazing, amazing. And Joanne, what was it like to be there, knowing that the Fijian Deputy Prime Minister was there and other representatives from 7 different countries that have made that brave and courageous decision to move their embassies to Jerusalem in solidarity with Israel, despite the war in Gaza?
There was a great sense of celebration about it. But, you know, I remember 2 years ago, at 2023, the Fijian ICEJ Fiji sponsored a flight. They chartered a flight to bring their delegates to the feast in 23. Wow. So, you know, this country, Fiji, is really stepping up, So it was really significant. And obviously to be there, and they had representatives from other nations that had also moved their embassies to Jerusalem. We just celebrated with them, because we see that they're aligning themselves with Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East. But more than that, they're aligning themselves with the word of God. Whether they know it or not, they're aligning themselves, and they're saying that Jerusalem is the eternal capital of Israel, because it's where God placed his name, it's where he will dwell. And so, you know, we pray for our own nation that we follow.
Absolutely, amen. So let's have a look at this excellent CBN report entitled "Despite Security Dangers, Christians Take Part in This Year's Feast of Tabernacles." And you might recognize someone in this excellent report by CBN.
More than 1,400 Christians from 71 nations are here in Jerusalem for the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem Feast of Tabernacles celebration. Israeli President Isaac Herzog welcomed the crowd and called them a living testament to the words of the prophets.
And I quote, "And it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations shall go up to worship the King and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles."
Each country represented at the feast came forward with its flag in the roll call of the nations. The U.S. has the largest delegation, but other countries whose governments have been standing against Israel also came.
The Norwegian government, as it is today, is very hostile to Israel, and we're very sorry that that's the situation. Israel will be just fine. I'm more worried about Norway. We need to get our values in order and understand why it's important to stand by Israel.
Bjarte Estebo is a journalist from Norway. Despite Norway's stand on Israel, it's one of the largest delegations at the feast with more than 100 people. He says the pro-Israel community in his country is passionate and understands its obligation to the Bible. As a journalist, he says truth is on Israel's side.
I think the best weapon we have is the truth. I think the truth is also a spiritual weapon. That's why it's in the armor of God. Your belt is the truth.
Joanne Lokuta comes from a town near Manchester, UK, where a synagogue was recently attacked on Yom Kippur. Despite the huge pro-Palestinian marches in London, there are many people in the UK who love Israel. She says Christians need to read the Bible to understand God's plan for the Jewish people.
To see how God called Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, how he reiterated his promises to Israel all through the Old Testament, all through the prophets, how he reiterated time and time again that Israel, the Jewish people, were his people, his chosen ones, how he had a purpose for them, how he was going to bring them back to the land after they'd been scattered.
Former ICEJ Director Malcolm Heading received the Nehemiah Award for standing with Israel. He says Israel has been through 2 years of unspeakable war and struggled under world pressure to fight annihilation.
Nevertheless, we have to admit that the miracles that have happened here on behalf of Israel for her defense and for her survival in the teeth of overwhelming aggression are nothing but miraculous. So I see the hand of the God of Israel in the restoration of this people.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Excellent report put together there by our friends at CBN, and great to see that Joanne's media skills came into fruition during that excellent interview. And Mark, just explain to us really about the annual march for the nations. And this year's Feast of Tabernacles came at such a time when we've seen the predominant Western nations such as Britain, such as France, Canada and Australia turn their back on Israel. And yet this march was a march of love and solidarity to Israel and the Jewish people to make them feel they're not alone, despite the fact that the nations are turning against Israel, and some of her former allies have betrayed her by recognizing a unilateral Palestinian state.
Well, Simon, this is the moment where the feast really gets into the public. Most of the program is held at a venue, whether it's the Pius Arena or the Binyanei Ha'uma, but this is where the delegates and the team get out onto the streets of Jerusalem. And many nations will dress up in their national clothing. There'll be bands, there'll be sweets being distributed, there'll be flags being waved, and it's just the most wonderfully joyful celebratory moment. And there are lots of little encounters between members of the teams that have come up and Israelis. You know, why are you doing this? Why are you here? And it gives a very beautiful opportunity for us to express our love, to say that Israel is not alone. And of course, particularly with this year's march, because that was quite literally the day when I think they were announced that the hostages were going to be released and the peace deal was being signed and being ratified. And so you can add to that what is normally a joyful occasion, sort of had this injection of fuel into it. So it must have been incendiary.
Amazing. So let's have a look at the highlights of the march in Jerusalem, which is an integral part of the Feast of Tabernacles 2025.
It's wonderful to be here with the Jerusalem March with more than 2,000 Christians that came from all over the world to show love for this nation of Israel that's so important. So as an Israeli, I'm so happy to be able to join them and show my love, the love of Israel, to them, because we love you guys.
Oh Mashiach, oh Mashiach, oh Mashiach, oh, oh Mashiach, oh, oh Mashiach, oh, oh Mashiach, oh Mashiach, oh Mashiach.
We're just so grateful that everyone is here and we're celebrating so many things at once, all together, and maybe there'll be peace. We can just be in love and in God together. That's all I hope. Chag Sameach.
Victory, we're gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to the Lord. We're gonna see a victory. We're gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to the Lord. Let God arise. Let his enemies be scattered. You wear the victor's crown. You overcome. You overcome.
You guys are all here, and it's so wonderful. And I was watching you all, the groups walk. It was so wonderful. My heart was filled with joy. Somebody mentioned Psalm 126, and Psalm 126 it says, the people of Israel are dreaming. And then the nations will say, guys, Hashem is doing great things to you.
So that must have been very special for those representatives from the UK, those 84 that went to show their love and support to Israel and the Jewish people, and particularly on the streets of Jerusalem, waving the British flag. Well done you, and well done guys. Talking now about this historic moment in Israel during the Feast of Tabernacles, and that was seeing the hostages come home. And for me, seeing a lot of the footage, what was so moving was the fact that the military helicopters that were carrying the Israeli soldiers, they deliberately flew past Hostage Square, and they could see the outpouring of love and support there was for them down on the ground in Tel Aviv. Share with us your thoughts on this historic moment in Israel when the 20 living hostages finally returned home after 2 years of sheer hell.
So I came home on the 11th, so I missed that. I know, but there were quite a few in our group that stayed on for like a Galilee tour. So they were able to be there that day, and they were there at Hostage Square, and they told me that the atmosphere was it was palpable, the feeling of joy, tingled with a bit of sorrow because of what they'd been through, but mainly joy, and also being able to see it as it was happening on the screen, the big screens that were around the square, and as the helicopters went over, just being able to be part of that historic day, and for it to happen at the end of the feast, just before Simchat Torah, as they were going into that from one feast to the other, just to be there for those people, our friends from the UK that went, it was amazing for them.
Amazing. So let's relive that historic moment when the Israeli hostages came home to their loved ones after 2 horrific years being held hostage in those awful terror tunnels, many of them starving, many of them undernourished, many of them being tortured and under extreme conditions. But this is an excellent report from our friends at Stand With Us.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. אמן.
יש לך שתי ידיים, שתי רגליים. איך אני ידעתי לך אבא?
תראו איזה גבר, תראו.
איפה הם פה?
רועי התחיל טקסט.
אני בסדר, מה את בחר? אני הכל טוב.
בוא.
As you agree with me, absolutely beautiful and moving scenes that the hostages could come back to their loved ones after 2 years in horrific conditions, and our prayers were answered, the prayers of Israel were answered, and we thank the Lord for their release. But also, not to miss out on the return of the hostages and this historic moment, President Trump decided to touch down in Ben Gurion Airport. He also then addressed the Knesset, Israel's parliament, being only the 4th US president to do so, and he was there for hours. But share with us the fact that the Israelis love President Trump, whether they're from the right or whether from the left, and he loves them as well. So share with us how important it was that President Trump was there to enjoy the time that the hostages came home.
Well, I think I saw a billboard somewhere sort of comparing Trump to King Cyrus, another great leader of the past who was part of Israel's restoration. Trump has done some amazing things. We don't always sort of put it together. But if you think about in the first term, the restoration of the embassy to Jerusalem, we sometimes forget how significant that was. And then, of course, toward the end of his term, the Abraham Accords, again, incredibly significant. And now in his second term, bringing about this peace deal and the sort of 20-point plan for the restoration of Gaza. It is quite remarkable when you think of Trump, and you can understand the love that the Jewish people have for him, because he has quite literally been their best friend and has done for them what I don't think any other US president has done.
No, absolutely. And Joanne, sadly in this program we don't have enough time to focus on the aid projects being carried out by ICEJ UK, but share with us how the Ministry of ICEJ UK is really helping Israel with amazing projects, whether it's helping Holocaust survivors, whether it's providing rucksacks for children, whether it's providing these PTSD centres to help Israelis recover from October the 7th. One of my favourites is the kind of dog and the horse centres for therapy as well. So share with us how this ministry is really blessing Israel and the Jewish people in such a loving and practical way.
Well, you're right, Simon. There's a lot. There's so much going on, and you don't have a program long enough really to talk about all of the amazing things that we're doing. But we really put comfort ye my people into practice. Yeah. That verse from Isaiah 40, and we do that from across every sector of Israeli society. So we're helping the Druze. We're providing help for drug addicts in Tel Aviv and prostitutes in Tel Aviv. We continue to support Aliyah with thousands and thousands of pounds, bringing people from all around the world back to the land. Holocaust survivors, that's our wonderful home in Haifa, that we just provide a loving environment for people who, Holocaust survivors, to live out the rest of their days. And like you say, of this last 2 years, so much money has gone into helping to rebuild the animal therapy. There's a music centre that we've put money into, and a youth centre. All the rebuilding projects that are going on along the Gaza border. We're right there in the centre of it. You know, we are a ministry that literally are the hands and feet in the land, and we represent Christians from all around the world who want to give and know that the money is going to go somewhere really, really important.
Absolutely. And share with us, Mark, how this is a kind of blessing that we can give to Israel and the Jewish people, because after all, the Jewish people have given us the Ten Commandments, they've given us the prophets, and they've also given us our own Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach. Yeah. And without him, we would not be saved, and we would be completely cut off from God and his presence. Yeah. And how we owe them a debt of gratitude, knowing also that the entire Bible is virtually written by Jewish people, apart from one.
Well, of course, that fundamental scripture out of Genesis 12:3, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. But in Paul's teaching, Romans 9:10 and 11, he talks about the root, the tree into which we have been grafted. And there is a sort of an arrogance when Christians begin to usurp and to sort of, in a sense, say we're the tree, we're the ones. We have been grafted in to the richness, the commonwealth, the inheritance of the Jewish nation and the Jewish people. And, Paul talks about that day when all Israel will be saved. And my understanding, or at least my thinking of that, is not that every Jew will be saved, but the notion of the spiritual Israel, which is the church, those who have been born again through Jesus, but the physical Israel, the biological Israel, the people, that there will come a moment when in Christ we become one, and all Israel will be saved. And what a glorious day that will be. Paul writes, he says, if their casting off resulted in salvation coming to the Gentiles, what will be their regathering but life from the dead?
No, absolutely. And we wait for that day with eager expectation. And Joanne, how can our viewers watching this program today get involved in this ministry and play their part in standing with Israel and the Jewish people, especially at this critical time when we see that our own nation and the nations are turning against Israel?
So I encourage anyone who's watching who isn't already signed up to our emails to sign up. Also, to get emails from the UK to find out what we're doing here, because that saying stronger together, you know, it's true. If you want to connect with like-minded Christians and you want to know more about what God is doing in Israel, then yeah, sign up and we will put you in touch with headquarters so you can find out, get ministry updates and biblical teaching and commentaries on everything. So yeah, please do sign up.
Absolutely. And you've been involved in the ministry for a long time, Mark, so you're kind of veteran on all this. Show us what it's given you and your walk with the Lord to be part of the ministry of ICEJ UK.
I would say that for me as a minister, as a church leader, it's given me a perspective about God's plan, that God looked for a people, the Jewish people, through whom he could bring salvation. And Christ comes. And through them, salvation comes to the world. But it's also given me a perspective on how history will end. You know, why are the Jewish people being regathered back to the land? To bring back the Messiah the second time. If you do not have a sort of a theology or an understanding of Israel, it becomes very difficult to understand how the events of the second coming take place. Jesus, after all, is coming back to Jerusalem, not London or New York.
Absolutely. And within 30 seconds, share with us the excitement, Joanne, of actually being involved in the ministry that's at the cutting edge of fulfilling biblical prophecy, particularly as it relates to Aliyah and the Jewish people coming home to Israel.
It's a blessing to be part of ICEJ and a real privilege. Honestly, it's opened my eyes. You know, I think I used to kind of, I didn't get it. At one point I didn't get it, and now I get it. So I say this to people, it's like you read the Bible in black and white, but when you start to understand how God's plans and purposes are weaved all the way through it, and it includes Israel and the Jewish people and how we fit in as Christians, the Gentiles, then you start to see the Bible in colour.
Brilliant way to end the programme. So Mark and Joanne, fantastic job on this month's Jerusalem Dispatch. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you for watching this programme at home. And kol hakavod in Hebrew to all the British delegates that went to this year's Feast of Tabernacles to show their love and support. But please get behind this ministry, because this ministry is doing wonderful work in blessing Israel and the Jewish people. And take a look at this wonderful prayer and healing ministry that is associated with this year's Feast of Tabernacles. So thank you for watching this month's Jerusalem Dispatch, ICEJ UK.
He's carrying you.